Hello, everyone. My name is Triss. You might think that I'm just a regular girl, and maybe at one point I was. But then things took a bit of a strange turn. Truth be told, it got really complicated. Even now, I'm still trying to adapt to my new way of living. You might be wondering about the reason. Well, have you ever felt like your whole life was just one big fabricated lie? After my mom died, I discovered that pretty much summed up my life. I'll start from the beginning and you'll have to stay with me in order to understand it all. I was an only child and my mom was divorced. We both lived in a small town. Other than my friends, I had no one in this world except for her. My mom was my entire family. She was a beautiful, kind woman, but she always rejected the marriage proposals she received so she could focus on raising me. Sometimes I used to tease her saying that she had to get married eventually because sooner or later I'd go to college and she'd be left all alone, and that I'd like to have a little sister for me to spoil. And she would always say, "You're going to get a sister, don't worry." Perhaps you're wondering where my dad was. Well, I had no idea. All I knew was that he left me with my mom after the divorce, and that he never bothered to ask about me. Whenever my mom and I talked about him, she'd tell me that he doesn't exist for us. He was the one who chose to leave, my mom would explain, but she never explained to me why he decided to do that. She would always find a way to dodge my questions. My mom worked as a waitress in a restaurant. She used to work all day and sometimes all night. She was a great mom, working day and night so she could provide me with everything I needed. She promised that during the next school vacation, we'd go to Hawaii. But if you asked me, I would have preferred her working fewer shifts instead of exhausting herself like that, and that her spending time with me at home is better than any beach in this world. I always missed her so much. She was my whole world. Despite all the financial problems we were going through, I always felt pretty happy because I truly believed I had the best mom in the world and that I was so lucky. Little did I know what was about to happen to our content little life. My mom had heart disease. Every time she exhausted herself, she'd come back home and take her pills. She'd sleep next to me and hold onto my hand tightly. My mom was afraid of death, and she used to talk to me about it a lot, as if she was trying to convince me that it was inevitable and we just had to accept it. I used to worry a lot about her whenever she brought up the topic of death. I didn't want my mom to die. If she died, I'd have no one. One day we went shopping, and it was so much fun. I chose a purple dress, but my mom chose a black one for me and said, "You don't own any black dresses. Every girl must have one." So she bought it for me even though I wasn't a fan of wearing black. On our way back to the car, I heard something fall on the floor. I looked behind me and my mom was lying on the ground. At that moment, I didn't think twice before calling an ambulance. I felt as if I'd almost lost her. I started praying for her on the way, and she just stared at me and kept saying that everything was going to be all right. No need to worry. It was clear that my mom's illness was getting worse by the day. That accident didn't turn out to be that bad, but what would happen next time? Well, my prayer didn't work. One day at school, I got a call from the hospital asking me to come in urgently. My mom was having heart surgery. I left the school right away. On my way to the hospital, I could barely see. I was crying so much. Time felt like it had slowed down, and I didn't understand what was going on. That morning, my mom left the house looking fine. She didn't forget to kiss my cheek, didn't forget to put on her makeup. She looked so healthy. So what had happened? When I got to the hospital, I found my mom all ready to go in for surgery. The nurse told me that my mom had exhausted herself a lot in the last couple of days and that her heart couldn't take it. She also told me that my mom refused to do the surgery before first seeing me. Once she saw me, her face changed. She was trying so hard to keep the smile on her face. Despite all her pain, she held my hand and told me she thought her time had come, and that if she didn't survive the surgery, I should know that no one in this world loved me as much as she did. Her words shocked me. I was speechless. Before I could open my mouth, I felt her hand squeezing my fingers and she said, "This box is for you. Take it and don't show it to anyone. And always remember, even though I had a good life, it doesn't mean that I don't have my regrets." My mom went in for surgery and I almost forgot about the box. The only thing on my mind was my mom, but that didn't last long.
During the surgery, she passed away.
The following days were the worst days of my life. I was at home all alone with no idea where to go or what to do. My nice neighbor kept checking up on me, and the police were looking for my next of kin. But I was sure they wouldn't find anyone all these years, and I'd never met any of my relatives. So why would they show up now? I no longer had anything in this world except the memories of my mom. Then, one morning, my nice neighbor came to tell me that the police were taking me to an orphanage in town, and that she'd also searched, but hadn't been able to find any relatives of mine. So, I had to collect my things and get ready to leave. While I was packing and saying goodbye to my home, I saw my mom in every single room. When at last I entered her room, I opened her closet. There, I found the box. It was the same box my mom had given me without telling me what it contained. With everything that had happened, I'd completely forgotten all about it. I hid the box between my stuff and left. Saying goodbye to my home, the home I'd lived in my entire life, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I promised myself that I was going to return once I turned 18 to continue my life there. It was only a matter of time. I moved into the orphanage. I won't lie, the faces that welcomed me were kind and nice, but none of those faces were my mom's. So the place would never become home for me. My world had crumbled. I waited for nighttime to come, eager to find out what secret the box contained. I waited until everyone was asleep and fetched the box. Under my blanket, I used my phone to get some light, and then I opened the box. Here was the real shock. Had I really lived all these years without knowing that my guardian angel was nothing but a lying demon? My mom had lied to me my whole life. But why? Why would she do this to me? The money she was working double shifts to provide us with wasn't really for traveling. It was all tucked inside a little yellow envelope. On it, she'd written, "This money belongs to Mr. Jake Amberson. Please find him after my death and return it to him." Next to it, there was a small will written for me. It said, "Dear Triss, my little angel, when you read these words, I'll be in the sky looking at you from up there. Just because I'm no longer with you physically and you can't see me doesn't mean that I'm not still looking after you. Forgive me for keeping a huge secret from you, a secret that will probably flip your life upside down. And forgive me for not telling you this in person. At the end of this letter, you'll find Mr. Amberson's address. He's a relative of ours. Go to him, and he'll tell you everything. Once again, please forgive me. Love, Mom." Who was this Jake Amberson? And why should I return this money to him? Why did she never mention him before? And what is this secret that she wouldn't reveal herself? What was she afraid of? Hundreds and hundreds of questions kept spinning through my head that night. I didn't fall asleep until sunrise. I was already tired, and these thoughts just made me even more exhausted. I couldn't think of my mom the same way anymore. How could she have been so selfish? Suddenly, I had a huge urge to get some answers to all my questions, but there was no one to answer them. I wish that had been the only problem. I woke up to the sound of some girls reading the letter my mom had left me. Emily was the one who'd stolen my box. She must have heard me at night crying, or she might have seen the light from my blanket and decided to find out what I was hiding. How cruel! I hadn't even spent a whole day here, and Emily had already started bullying me. I screamed at them all to get away from my box, but they didn't. I tried to get it back, but she pushed me on the floor. My heart ached, but I didn't care. My only concern was getting back that box. While I was screaming, the supervisor entered the room. The girls scattered around the room, and they threw my box onto the floor. As for me, she took me to the principal so she could deal with the troublemaking new girl, the one who hadn't even been here for a whole day and who had already started making trouble. I held my box and went to the principal's office. I didn't know if I should tell her about Mr. Amberson or not, because my mom had said before her death to keep this between us two. I sat in front of the principal for a whole hour, listening to her as she lectured me about manners and how a nice lady should act. But the truth is, I didn't listen to anything she said. I was thinking of how I could get out of there. I decided to first get revenge on Emily, and I wasn't going to let anyone stand in my way. Perhaps if I showed her my evil side, she'd leave me alone and stop bothering me. The next day, I waited for lunchtime so we could all be in the same room. I spread some melted dark chocolate on the seat she usually sat on. As planned, she sat on it. I was dying from the moment I pointed at her pants and then proceeded to make everyone laugh at her. She stood up and I said, "Hey, Emily, still not got the hang of potty training, I see." Everyone stared at her pants and then started laughing hysterically. I loved how I turned Emily from the bully to a little joke in front of everyone. At the same time, I expected that she would find a way to get back at me. But before she could even figure out how, I'd be out of there. You might wonder, was I an evil girl? No, I wasn't. My mom and I had lived together for my whole life. But now I had to learn how to stand up for myself. No one else was going to do it for me. I didn't bother anyone except those who bothered me. Otherwise, I was a very sweet girl. After my sweet revenge, I started thinking of ways to get out of there. A whole week had passed with me trying to ignore the annoying girls in the orphanage, especially Emily, and thinking of a way to run away. I had the money and the address. All that was left was for me to get out of there. One night, I waited until everyone was asleep. I didn't take anything with me except for a small backpack. Inside it was the box. I almost got away with sneaking out of the back door until Emily started screaming, "Tris is trying to run away!" I expected Emily to get revenge on me, but what she was doing now was going to destroy me, not just annoy me. This time, Emily had won. Once again, I was taken to the principal's office. However, this time I wasn't just lectured about manners. She took my bag from me and started searching it. I screamed for her to give it back, but she paid no attention. So I started crying while hiding my face with my hands and mumbling, "There are personal things in there, my mom's personal things." But she didn't return anything to me. I felt as if she took away the only thread to finding out the truth behind the secret that was keeping me up at night. I hated that place. I hated Emily, and I hated my mom for doing this to me. Mr. Amberson was my only chance. I wrote his name on Facebook and started searching all the pages full of people who had the same name, but I didn't know what I was looking for, and all the photos I found were of strangers. If only I could remember the address, but my search turned out to be fruitless. I succumbed to the reality of me living a life with a huge secret that I would never uncover. But that didn't last for long. A few days later, the principal requested for me to go to her office again. I started to hate hearing the word principal and office in the same sentence. But what waited for me there was something I never expected. The principal didn't take away my box for nothing. She also knew that what was in those letters were no ordinary words. She took up my mission of finding Mr. Amberson with great respect for my mom's wishes of keeping everything a secret. When I got to the office, the principal was sitting behind her desk, and across from her sat a man I had never met in my life before. But for some reason, that man made me feel something I couldn't understand. He made my heart feel warm. He kind of looked familiar, even though I was sure I had never met him in my entire life, not even once. I sat directly in front of him. I couldn't take my eyes off him, even when the principal was talking to me. I knew my staring was making him uncomfortable. I noticed he was nervous as he too stared at me. The principal's words meant nothing to me, to the point that I didn't understand anything of what she was saying until I heard her say, "Mr. Amberson." "You're Mr. Amberson?" I screamed loudly. I asked her to explain everything. She told me that she took the box from me because she wanted to help me. She instructed the police to find Mr. Amberson because if I had a relative, I'd be able to leave the orphanage. But that would depend on Mr. Amberson. The man started speaking instead of her. He told me he was sorry for my mom's death, and I could see that he was barely able to hold back his tears. He said that if he'd known about her death, he would have gone to the funeral to be there with me, and that he'd never leave me here. Now all I had to do was to go collect my things so I could go with him. Everything was happening so fast, and I still didn't have answers for the questions swirling in my head, but at least I'd found him. The answers I'd get later. Mr. Amberson lived in a city far away from here. My heart was beating fast as we drove along the long roads. I couldn't understand why it was beating so fast, so much so that it actually hurt a bit. Mr. Amberson didn't say a word the entire way, but I could no longer bear the silence. I tried to start a conversation with him and asked, "Were you related to my mom?" He shook his head without saying a word. "Did you know me? Because I don't remember meeting you before, and yet I have this feeling that tells me that I've met you before." He looked at me for a second before saying, "All right, the last time I saw you, you were just a 1-year-old. You look so much like your mom, exactly like I expected you to be." I replied, "Yes, everyone used to tell me that." And then we continued our ride in silence until we arrived at a house. I decided along the way that I was going to tell him about the money and the box once we arrived. But as usual, my plans didn't succeed. The pain in my chest increased. My hand grasped at my heart and I started to look pale. Mr. Amberson looked at me and asked if I was okay. I wasn't able to answer. I felt my heart beating so fast it might explode. Swiftly, Mr. Amberson took me to the hospital. When I got there, they did a whole full body check. It went on for hours and hours. I wasn't thinking of my heart, or my mom, or the scared looks on the faces of the doctors around me. All I could think about was the moment when Mr. Amberson would finally reveal what my mom had been hiding from me. After finishing the tests, Mr. Amberson sat next to me and started asking me about my mom. Where was she for all those years? What did she work as? How did we spend those last years? When he was done with his questions an hour later, I said, "You look like a nice man. Why did my mom break contact with you and all of our relatives?" Then he said, "It was because of your father, dear." My father? Was he my father's relative? That would explain everything. Now it made sense why he'd met me when I was a child. Now I understood why my mom specifically chose him without telling me the reason. Maybe she thought that if I knew he was a relative of my father's, I wouldn't want to have contact with him. My father who abandoned me as a child without a reason. That man didn't deserve my mom. She had been a kind and nice woman. But unlike what my mom might have thought, I wouldn't have refused to meet up with my father's relative. The money she left behind must have been for him to take care of me, to ensure my future. I was relieved that the secret she'd kept from me wasn't that catastrophic after all. It was no longer necessary to open the topic of the box with him anymore. All my worries had been for nothing. During this time, I wasn't the only one with thoughts whirring through their brain. The doctor revealed the results of my tests. He told me I had a hereditary disease in my heart and that it was the same illness that had killed my mom. He then continued and said that I had to undergo surgery to implant a little device that would provide extra support to my heart whenever it got weak. He assured us that the surgery was completely safe, but I was still really afraid. All this time, I'd been ignoring the pain in my chest. I didn't want to imagine that I might end up like my mom. I didn't want to die in that way. At least, not now. In the beginning, I refused the surgery. However, Mr. Amberson was my legal guardian and he agreed on the surgery. Not only that, he also convinced me that everything was going to be fine. And he was right. I stayed in the hospital for a whole week until I got better. And Mr. Amberson never left my side. He received many texts and calls, but he ignored them all. All except one, which I overheard. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I was asleep and I heard him whispering, "Yes, she's all right. Soon she'll return with me home. Don't worry. Everything is turning out exactly as we planned." I assumed that Mr. Amberson was married and he was just assuring his family that everything was fine. That meant I'd have more nice relatives. That made me feel something new. This was the first time I understood what it meant to have a family. Yes, my mom had been enough for me. But that didn't mean that I didn't dream of having a bigger family. The awaited day came. Now, I was going to leave with Mr. Amberson and go back to my new home. I was very excited, but I never expected any of the things I found there. Mr. Amberson wasn't his usual self and was nervous, even mumbling his words. It was strange, but I paid it no mind. Once we arrived, he looked at me and said, "Now you're going to meet my wife Clara and my daughter Melanie. They're really nice. You're going to love them." Then we entered his house. I was shocked at what I saw. His daughter looked exactly like me. Same hair, same eye color, same height. She also had one dimple on her right cheek. Who was she? Was it possible that Mr. Amberson is... No, that wasn't possible. My dad was a bad person. That was what my mom had told me. There's no way this good man was my dad. Or was he? Had my mom just told me lies? His daughter got closer to me and tried to say hi, but I started crying hysterically. I couldn't stop myself. I just fell on the ground. I was devastated. What could be worse than this? Who should I believe? My mom who'd left me without answers, or this man whom I'd only known for a week? Who am I? And if this man was truly my dad, why didn't he say anything the first time he saw me? Everything around me was hazy. His wife led me to a room they'd prepared for me. She told me to rest. But before she left, she said, "Jake has been dreaming of meeting you his entire life. We understand it's hard what you're going through, but don't take a side before hearing your dad's side of the story." Yes, he was my dad. After an hour, Mr. Amberson entered the room. Or should I say, my dad? My dad entered the room. I refused to look at him. I felt as if all the people I trusted in my life had lied to me. I no longer knew what was real and what wasn't. He started telling me everything from the beginning, and I don't mean from the day I was born. I mean from the day he first met my mother. It was during a wedding for a friend of his. My mom was 20 and he was 24. He fell in love with her at first sight. After only a couple of months, they decided to get married, and they did. Everything kept happening way too fast. They had me after a year, but I wasn't alone. I had a twin sister, Melanie. That explained why we looked so much alike. After our birth, things started going south with him and my mom. She couldn't bear all the responsibilities life kept throwing at her. She kept telling him that she could no longer stand living with him. He tried so hard to make things work because he loved her so much, but that didn't happen. He was a real estate broker, a successful one. He was putting some money aside in order to buy a bigger house, since the one they had wasn't enough. My mom started working in a car shop, even though my dad insisted that she stayed home and take care of us. But one night, he woke up to find my mom and me gone. She'd also taken the money he'd been saving and had left a note. In it, she said, "I can no longer tolerate life with you. I can't do this anymore. I've taken Tris and the money, and I've left you Melanie in the house. That way, it's equal. I wish you a happy life." Later, he found out that my mom left him to be with her boss from work, who soon after left her and went back to his family and children. My mom disappeared after that, and that was the last he heard from her. He couldn't find her, and today he finally understood why. After she ran away, she changed our last name so that he could never find us and take me away from her. I was so shocked. I never expected my mom to be the one who left my dad. She'd lied to me all those years, but now I could understand why. She must have been so embarrassed, especially because her fling with her boss didn't even last. Maybe that was the real reason she never had a relationship with anyone else after that. She was ashamed of herself. Even though I was angry, I couldn't stay that way with my mom for very long. My mom had been a great person to me. And I mean, everyone makes mistakes. As for my dad, I told him that my mom stayed faithful to him all her life, and that she made sure I'd meet him after her death. I showed him what was inside the box. He held the money and started crying. That day was definitely one of the hardest days of our lives. However, things started getting better as the days went on. My sister looked so much like me. It was crazy weird. We didn't grow up together, but we had the same tone of voice. She liked the same movies I did. She even acted like me. Spending time with her was really fun. As for my stepmom, she loved me so much, but she couldn't replace my real mom. Every day, I told my sister stories of our mom so she could share the memories of her and so she could know what an amazing person she'd been. And my dad, well, we became so close. It was as if we'd lived together our whole life.